Okay, I think you guys can now see me. So, good evening. I'm glad you guys could make it and take part in this live webinar. I hope that the information that I give you guys for this course will help you guys learn a little bit about how to edit photos using GIMP and the other program I'm using, which is Raw Therapy. This course is this webinar is gonna talk a little bit about my post-processing workflow. Okay, I think you
Basically,
guys can
oh,
now
look at that.
see
It
me.
is working.
So,
Good.
good evening. I'm glad you guys could make pause. Okay. Anyway, so this course is basically gonna go over, my post-processing workflow, how I take photos that I shoot with my DSLR, I shoot in RAW, how I take those, how I organize them, how I edit them from the RAW format, batch export them, finish them up in GIMP, and then how I again export them in batch using GIMP. That's probably the biggest weakness GIMP has out of the box is its inability to do files in batch. Um, but we have a way around that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But for those who don't really know me, my name is Alex. I run GIMPtutorials.com. I've been editing photos using GIMP for about 10 years now, and I really love digital art. I love digital painting, and I think the process as a whole is really cool. That's really what got me into this kind of thing. Um, but a few years ago, my wife and I did a lot of hiking. So we would go walking on some trails around our local area, and we would walk around with DSLR cameras on our attached to our sides, and we would just take these beautiful, wonderful nature photos early in the morning. And of course, I would shoot in RAW because I think it's the best way to shoot. And I would come home with hundreds of these RAW formatted photos, excited to show them to the world. And I would never take the time to share them because I felt like there was this gigantic wall of photo editing that I had to do before I was ready to share the photos. I know that seems a little bit silly, but I really wanted my photos to be perfect before people saw them. I see the potential in a photo, and I have this burning desire to make it how I envision it, I guess. Like the photos in my head, and I want it to look like that. I look at a picture and I see what it could be, not what it is. And if they're two different things, I'm uncomfortable with sharing it. So um, that really began to bother me because I was taking all these great photos and I was seeing all this potential. And I was only going through and editing, two or three at a time, and basically the other 100 or 200 would just disappear because and get lost in my hard drive, never to be looked at again because I just didn't have a good workflow to go through and edit all of my photos at one time, be able to, um, get through that quickly. So, that bugged me a lot. So I began to to do a little bit of research and figure out how to do that with GIMP and with raw therapy and things like that. I'm a big fan of the open source community and open source in general as a paradigm. So I really wanted to use that instead of Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom, which are great products and can do a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about here. In fact, they can do everything I'm going to talk about here. But I really wanted to focus on doing this with something open source and free. So um, anyway, the um, the point is, I I ended up coming up with a really efficient workflow on how to edit a ton of photos at one time, and that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what we're going to go over. I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, I can't hope to share all of my knowledge with you in the hour that we have, um, but I definitely think I can get you started on the path of making your own edits, and hope that you will find the information in this webinar useful. Also, if you're here, make sure to stick around until the end of the course because at that point I'll stick around for the last 5 to 10 minutes and do some question and answers and kind of see if I can help you guys there toward the end. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Go over real quick and make sure that um, I'm able to see the chat. Oh, good. Okay. I can see the chat and I'll be able to actually keep up with you guys. So let's go ahead and click watching it on YouTube at the same time. So it's kind of awkward. But okay, there we go. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So actually, the first thing we're going to use is not GIMP. We're actually going to use another program called Raw Therapy, which Raw Therapy is a open source raw editing program that you can download. I think it's just rawtherapy. Is it .org? I think I would have looked this up before this, but anyway. So, so if you go to rawtherapy.com, you can click on downloads and then click on stable and just download it right here for your for whatever operating system you're running. I happen to be running Windows 10, which runs this, and I already have it installed, so we don't have to worry about this. So what we'll do is we'll click right here and open up Raw Therapy, and we'll open up. There it is, and from there I'm gonna go ahead and click on Bennett, this folder right here called Bennett. And what you're gonna see is a bunch of photos of my son Bennett, who he's just born in October, so this is a really good time to talk about this post-processing workflow, as you can imagine, because I'm taking so many pictures of this kid because he's so freaking cute. But I digress. Um, what I really want to get into is before you start editing your photos, the first thing you want to make sure to do is you want to take the time to organize your photos and prioritize. Um, don't try to edit everything. Don't try to edit all of your photos. You're just going to kill yourself trying to edit four different versions of a slightly um, different photo. Like this photo here and this photo here are two very similar photos, but I shouldn't edit them both because it's probably a waste of time. I should just pick which one I like best and edit that one directly. And that's what I'm going to do. So the first thing I do, like I said, is I organize my photos and figure out which ones are worth my time. So to do that, I will use filters. So up here in the top left-hand corner, you've got a series of filters, the star ratings and the different color filters, and basically um, they'll let you organize and filter, as the name suggests, your photos out. So if I click on, let's say, I click on this picture and I hold in control and I click on, I don't know, let's just click on 5 or 6 random pictures. And if I right click on this and I click color label and I set it to the color green, you'll now see all of those photos that I selected now have a green dot beside them. If I click on this green circle right here, it's only going to show the photos that were labeled green. That's really useful for um, filtering out the photos that you don't want. Let's go ahead and reselect those photos again and actually let's filter through and just select them and then get rid of that filter. So go to um, color label, label none. That'll get rid of them and get rid of the filter. So once uh, once that's done, you can go to you just go through and I actually use stars instead of the color filters myself. And basically, I'll just click on all the different pictures that I want one at a time, and I'll just rate them at 5 stars. If they're 5 stars, I'm going to edit them beyond the shadow of any doubt. They're top priority, and I'm going to make sure to edit them. This one is pretty good. I like it better than this one, but we're going to give it 4 stars because I don't love it. I want to make sure that I'm trying to organize. Only the photos I really have to edit are 5. 4 stars are yeah, you probably should, and 3 stars are yeah, I guess you could, and then anything below that I probably won't even look at. So this picture's pretty good, but I think we're gonna find better ones as we continue on. So we'll just continue scrolling through, and like this one's great because I'm in the background and I'm smiling, and it just tells a story, and I like that. Uh, Click on. Well, that one's kind of funny. So let's put that one at 5 stars. Come back up, and maybe we'll put this one here at 4 stars. This one could be at 5 stars because again, I think it's nice because it tells a story. If we continue to scroll down, you'll see some more of pictures of him. Let's see. Oh, that one would have been great if he was in the frame. This one's really good. Pretty good. Pretty good. you get the idea though. So you basically kind of you just go through and I'll crop that one. You go through and you just organize and pick the photos that you want to edit and you think you should edit, and that's how you start editing. You don't want to just edit everything because you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And this one, that's funny. Um, this one's good, pretty good. I really like this one. So, um, that one's good, really good. See, I'm just clicking on the photos as I go through. That one's pretty good. Couple photos of a dog, and this is another example. Let's say for example, you took photos for a wedding, right? And you've got photos of the bride, photos of the groom, photos of the groom's family, the bride's family, and they're all jumbled up in one big folder because you took all the pictures in one time. That's where the filters can really come in handy. Because you could filter out, all the the photos that have feature the bride, you color red. All the photos that feature the groom, you label green. In this case, I could label all the photos of the dog, or the dogs in the picture. I select those, I can right click and I can click color label and we'll set that to yellow. So now, again, if I click yellow, it'll only show photos of the dog. So that helps to filter out the stuff that you don't necessarily want, and it also makes it a lot easier to figure out what photos are great and what photos aren't. Because you can say, okay, well, I didn't have enough photos of this specific person, so let's filter out nothing but photos of that person and get more 5-star photos and pull from there and figure out which photos we need from that. So I hope that makes sense. And it looks like this sums up pretty much all of the photos I want to work with. I don't really want any of the photos of the dog in this case. Um, Maybe this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll back up to the top. And we're going to click on the 5-star button. And you'll see it only shows the photos I rated with 5 stars. So what we can do now is basically just go through and start editing them one at a time. Now, the overall process that I do for this is the first step is edit the photo in raw therapy. Second step is to and as I'm editing the photos, I put them in the queue, in what's called the queue, which is over here. And basically what that does is it says, all right, whenever I'm done editing, I want you to convert all of the files in my queue to a format that I can open using GIMP. And then at that time, I will open each one of those photos one at a time using GIMP. And I will make the further edits that I need to make. Maybe I'm doing some skin retouching using frequency separation, or maybe I need to replace the sky with a completely different sky. I would do that in GIMP. If it was, I wanted to improve the eyes, or I wanted to use um, some color modification tools to blend different exposures of a photo together. Those are the kind of things I do in GIMP. The stuff that I do in raw therapy is the basic um, exposure adjustments that make the photo better. Like for example, this photo right here, the sky is pretty overexposed, but it's still there. It's not completely blown out, so we might be able to rescue it using raw therapy and GIMP as a combination. So that's kind of the process. And then after the photos are edited, GIMP, you then use a plugin, an add-on, a free add-on for GIMP that basically exports all of the photos, all the XCF GIMP files to JPEGs. And you can even, with this batch exporter, you can even scale them down to be a more web-friendly size. You can save them at the full scale size, all kinds of really stuff that makes it a lot easier to get a lot of photos out and ready to be viewed. Um, so there we go. So let's go ahead and get started. So now that we have our photos here and we're filtered and we're only looking at the 5-star photos, we can start by editing those ones. So I'm just going to go to the first one right here and double click on it. It will open the file, and then I'm going to actually click right here and set it to neutral. And the reason why I do that is because it automatically sets the photo back to whatever the original settings were for the camera. So this is what the camera shot, and that's it. Now, here's an example right here. In the background here, there's a book and there's a purse, on this bench. Now, those aren't necessarily the end of the world, but if I wanted to get rid of those, I would have to do that in GIMP. So that's an example of when you would edit it in GIMP versus when you would do it in raw therapy. Raw therapy does nothing but adjust color and exposure and sharpness and a couple of things like that. But whenever it comes to super fine changes, like replacing pixels in general, you have to rely on GIMP for that. So let me over. Okay. So let's start by clicking on, if you go over to here on the right side, this is where all of your different tools are for adjusting your color, your sharpness, and the exposure of your photo. And there's a ton of ways to, for better lack of term, skin the cat in this, to adjust it. Now, the first thing that jumps out at me is his hat is way blown out. Let's see if what happens whenever we adjust the exposure compensation down a little bit. Okay, so you see it's not really creating the effect we desire. It's just making the whole picture dark. So we're going to click on this button right here and reset it. That'll put it back to the default settings. And instead, we'll try changing the threshold. And you'll see that a lot of this is just kind of experimenting with the different sliders and seeing how they change photo. So as I'm looking at this, I'm actually coming to realize that this photo is pretty blown out. I mean, right here, I clicked on this little exclamation mark, and that shows all of the parts of the photo that is blown out to the point to where it can't be recovered. So this photo actually may not be a good option. So we're actually going to give this a 4-star rating and get rid of it altogether and just move on to a different photo. There's probably a better version of that photo in there somewhere. But anyway, so this photo, as you can see, we'll go to neutral. This is how it was originally whenever it came out of the camera. So I like to do that because I like to get rid of any of the assumptions or changes that were made to the photo using any other program that's ever been done in the past. All these photos have already been processed, which is why you're seeing the edited versions first. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would see, okay, does the exposure compensation, yeah, let's turn that up a little bit, but not much. Notice the hat gets blown out pretty fast, so we have to be careful here. Maybe instead of adjusting that, we'll up the, turn down the black levels a little bit. So basically what this bar does is it says, okay, we're going to take all of the black values and make them lighter. And you'll notice that's what it does. If I hit reset, it makes this photo significantly darker. But if I pull this back, only getting rid of the darkness. It doesn't change the hat to make it lighter. So this is a good fix for that. Now if I adjust the shadow compression, you'll see it kind of changes things a little bit. And honestly, I just spend a lot of time just adjusting these sliders a little bit until I find what I like. I think this photo needs to be more saturated. I think we can leave that alone. But like I said, we're focusing on big picture here. We're really looking at just the photo as a whole and not individual parts yet. We will be here shortly though. I think that's a little too contrast. Um, there we go. Okay. So now if I see you guys are saying that you're having some trouble viewing it, I will let you know I am recording this as well, and I will be uploading the HD version. So for those of you with a slower connection or who are having trouble watching the quality of the video, I will definitely be fixing that later. So anyway, um, so let's see. So now I turn the lightness down. That looks pretty good. If we look at our histogram, it looks pretty balanced. So I like that. Now if we go to the up here in the top right hand corner, there's exposure, sharpening, and white balance. Now with white balance, you can actually adjust the temperature, and what this will do is it'll change the coloration of the photo. And that'll do some pretty neat effects. This is where you get a lot of people who will create those those kind of dreamy, you know, looking photos. I don't personally like that kind of stuff for portraits, but it's just my personal opinion. The intent for this really is to correct the white levels on the photo to make it look the right color, because your camera doesn't naturally know what color the world is. It takes its best guess, but it's not perfect. So anyway, this is a pretty good exposure. Now, if I really wanted to, a couple things that jump out at me in this photo are, one, my teeth are pretty yellow. Um, so we could fix that. We could, if we wanted to, we could edit his eyes and lighten them up a little bit. And actually, let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to do something called create something called a um, a snapshot. So basically, if you click this button right here and click Add, it creates this thing called a snapshot. What that is, it's a it saves the settings of this photo that we've adjusted, all the adjustments that we've made to this photo. It saves it right here as a snapshot, so we can always come back to it later. And the reason why I did that is because I want to create another version of this photo, um, where I adjust and lighten the photo to make his eyes brighter and things like that. But the problem is whenever I make those adjustments, it's going to mess up the rest of the photo. So I'm creating a snapshot now, and this first snapshot is designed to basically say, I like the majority of the photo looks good here. And then my next snapshot will be, okay, I adjusted this specifically for the eyes. The eyes look good in this snapshot, and the rest of the photo looks good in this snapshot. And then later on, what I'll do is with GIMP, I'm going to take both of those snapshots, combine them together, and mask off everything except for what I want from each specific snapshot. Now, I hope that makes sense, but we'll get into it more uh, as I go. So, like I said, we have a snapshot right here. I can always come back to this version. And in the meantime, I'm going to actually go back over and adjust my settings. I'm going to zoom in because the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm going to try to make his eyes lighter. And I just zoomed in by scrolling in with the mouse wheel. And also there's a navigator up here. You can grab this and move it around to kind of get to where you want to be. So then now I'm just going to turn up the lightness and leave the contrast as it is, saturation up some, and then actually adjust the white balance and make it more blue, with the expectation, because his eyes are actually blue. So now I'm going to save this as a snapshot, and you'll see we now have two snapshots of the photo. Snapshot 1, which is this one, and snapshot 2, which is the blue one. Now the blue one looks kind of funky. Some people might actually like this look, which if you do, cool. You can save it and do whatever you want. That's the magic of this. But the reason why I did it was specifically because I want the eyes to be more blue for the photo that I'm going to send out in GIMP. So now that we have these two snapshots ready to go, we're going to go ahead and add these to the queue and keep on going. So to do that, I click on the photo and then I click on, I think, yep, it's these gears right here. So if I click on this, and I click on snapshot 2, and I click on the gear again, see up here in the top left hand corner it says Q, and then in parentheses it reads 2. So if I click on this, it'll show the two different photos here ready to be exported out as JPEGs. Go back over to the editor, and you'll see, like I said, these snapshots are kept here, so we'll be able to if we ever need to, we can come back to these and use these as starting point. But I'm happy with where we went with this photo, so let's move on to the next one. So we'll click on this, double click on this picture, and it will open the next photo. Now, all we need to do for this is basically the same process. You just started making adjustments. So we'll first go to neutral to set it back to whatever it was by default, and we'll start making our adjustments as fit. So again, I'm going to turn that black level down a little bit, the contrast up, and probably crank up the lightness some, and maybe this a little bit of saturation. Not gonna worry about the sharpness much. These photos are pretty good for that. And if we wanted to, you can click this spot white balance and then click on a cloud, and that'll use the cloud as reference for what's white. Um, so if I click on this blue, you're basically telling raw therapy that is supposed to be white. So it's going to try to make it white, and as a result, it changes everything else to a crazy color. If I click on, if I just click on these reset buttons, it'll all put it back to the regular stuff. But okay, so now, I mean, that photo is pretty good, just like that. I like that a lot. Maybe I'll turn the black levels. Yeah, I'll leave them down. I'll save that as a snapshot, and then I'm gonna actually create another version that's a little bit darker, just so that I can get more shadows on in the photo to make it look more dramatic later on. And let's that. So turn leave the contrast where it was. Maybe turn the saturation down a hair, and click add. So now we have two snapshots: a lighter version and a darker, more highly contrasted version. This one looks kind of washed out compared to this one, but the two of putting them together will probably create a really nice final image. Go ahead and click on the gear to put these two in the processing queue, and head and go. And the process from there is pretty much the same. So with this photo, it would be the same trick. You know, we go to neutral. Um, this photo is actually a really good example, though. I'm gonna go ahead and do this one too, and we'll move on to GIMP after this photo, just because I think you guys kind of get the point with these. So if you go to the exposure levels, and we're at neutral. Okay. So again, we'll just pull the black level back, and you'll see his face will come out a lot more. We can probably turn the exposure comp up. And now look what happens when I turn it up, though. I mean, everything just gets completely blown out. So let's go back to neutral and restart. Now, that's okay, though, because I think his face is insanely dark in this photo, and we want to fix that. So start by turning up the lightness and maybe the contrast. Now, I'm not very happy with that. So let's focus first on the overall photo before we try to worry about just his face. So let's go back to turning up the lightness and the contrast, probably turning up the black levels a little bit and cranking up the saturation. I'm not going to worry. I'm more worried about the background at this point the more I look at this, because so bright and he's so dark. And like I'd said earlier, this sky, we kind of need to restore it, because if you look at it here, it's almost blown out. So we need to recover the background and recover the foreground. So that's going to require two different snapshots. The first snapshot will be focused on making the background better, and the second snapshot will be focused on making the subject better. So first, let's do the sky. So to do that, we will just pull the exposure comp down a little bit, turn the contrast up some, probably. Maybe not, maybe leave the exposure comp alone. Maybe turn the lightness down some. Those black levels back a little bit to pull the green back out of the grass. And let's see what shadow compression does some pretty neat things. Lightens up that green nicely, but let's just leave that alone. And then we'll probably pull the saturation back because it's super blue. There we go. That looks good. Pretty good. Set that back. Yeah, that looks okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that as a snapshot. So the sky looks pretty good, but he does not. He's pretty dark. So let's set ourselves back to neutral. So we're back to the original settings, and we'll adjust him to um, improve the lightness of his face. Um, as for the unsharp masking, I don't really think it's required for this one either. We can turn it on and see what it does. Turn up the radius a little bit. It doesn't really seem to do a lot for this photo. Um, Maybe it does. I just don't. I can't really tell myself. Maybe, I mean, there was one photo back there that could have benefited from the noise reduction, maybe, but I don't think it really think it needs it that much. Um, it is a little out of focus, fortunately, but not much you can about that. Okay, so let's edit the lightness a little bit of his face to get it a little better. So I'm gonna actually turn the black levels down, turn up my highlight compression, and my exposure comp. Now notice, like I said, as soon as I start doing that, this entire sky disappears, but we're not worried about that. We're only worried about getting his face and his arms exposed properly. Turn up the contrast, lightness a little bit, and we'll add that. So now we have this and this, and you can see between the two of those, we're going to be able to create a pretty nice final photo. Maybe up the saturation some, make him look like an Oompa Loompa. Yeah, I think I like that better. And saturation back up to like 17. Add that. Okay, so now we have this version where the sky is fairly well exposed. It's still pretty blown out, but it's a little better. And then this one. Okay, so we'll add those to the queue by clicking on the gear and clicking on each snapshot. Okay, so now if you go over to our queue, see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 photos. And you know what? Before we do that, actually let's do one more snapshot for this one and focus on his eyes again, because so blue. Um, so we'll adjust the temperature, get that super blue color, and we'll turn the exposure comp up just a little bit, contrast up a little bit, and lightness, saturation, not that much, maybe like that. Okay, and then add that as a third snapshot and save that out. Now we have 7 photos here that are going to get exported out, and we'll just go ahead and do that now. So from here, you just click on Save to Folder, and you can pick whatever folder you want. I'm going to go to Other, go to Users, Thomas, Pictures, Bennett, and I'm going to create a new folder here and just call it JPEG. And click Open, and then just hit Start Processing. And you'll see it's going to start running through and exporting each one of these files as JPEGs. So, you know, right now, while this is doing this, you could go upstairs and get yourself a cup of coffee or do something else. This is where things get really powerful because you're focusing on reducing steps. You know, the big killer for editing a photo is you open the photo, you edit the photo, you hit File Save, you specify where you need to save it, and then you go on to the next one and you do that again. Doing things like this, like the batch processing, allows you to just make the edits, not worry about saving it, and then let the program automatically save it all for you at one time. So now, as you can see, all of those photos have been exported and are ready to go. So we're going to actually close raw therapy because we're done with that now and switch over to GIMP. Now, if I click File Open, you'll see if I go to Thomas, Pictures, Bennett, JPEG. Well, I actually saved them out as TIFFs, not JPEGs, but let's actually fix that. Open raw therapy back up. Go to the queue. I think I can recover. I can't. Well, that's all right. We'll just use the TIFFs. So we'll hit File, Open, and we'll go to Thomas. The TIFFs are actually probably better anyway. It's a better format. So we'll open the first TIFF. It usually gives me some of these errors. We'll convert. Okay. Okay. So here's TIFF is generally better. Trying off to answer your question, it's better because it doesn't compress the photos, and if you export it out as a JPEG and then you make edits and then you save it as a JPEG again, you're actually compressing your photos twice, which isn't ideal, which is why you should save it as TIFF. The only reason why I was going to do it as JPEGs for this sample was because it would be a little bit faster. But anyway, so let's click File, Open as Layers, and we're going to actually go through and pick both of these photos. So there's DSC009 and DSC009 2, or 1, I'm sorry. And those are the 2 different versions of this photo. So we're going to control and click on both of them. Click Open. It'll give me an error notice. I actually have no idea what that is. I think it's a GIMP error, or a GIMP bug, 2.8 bug, but okay, so now we have this photo opened as 2 layers. We have the original, the good version, and then the slightly different version that's really bluish colored that we're going to use to help us change the colors of his eye. And in addition to that, I'm going to go ahead and whiten my teeth while we're in here and go from there. So here's the original photo and here's the new photo on the second layer. The first thing I'm going to do is right click on it and click add layer mask. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with layer masks, I actually have a lesson that goes over it. In fact, you guys should probably, if you haven't already watched my GIMP for Beginners series, you should definitely do that because it's full of really good information that'll help you a lot. But I don't really have the time today to get into details of how layer masks work or what they are. But just know that you need to use them. So I'm going to right click and add a layer mask, set it to white full opacity, or actually I'll do black full transparency and click add. And what that'll do is it creates the black layer mask parallel to the blue image layer. And as you probably know, as a result, that makes the entire second layer visible. Now we can zoom into his eyes and with the paintbrush tool, and we're painting on the color white, and we're going to paint on our layer mask and just simply paint color white where his eyes are. And you'll see, just like that, his eyes are getting insanely blue, which is probably not going to look very good, but we can fix that. So I'm going to kind of just color this in, and then I'll switch over. I'll get rid of that bit, switch over to the color black here, and now I'm painting color black to get rid of the layer mask, or mask off the extra bit. There we go. Now I am a huge, I really don't like whenever eyes are overdone. I actually have a mini rant about it on one of my how to edit eyes tutorials. Um, and that, for example, is uh, a good example of what I don't like. So I'm going to actually pull the opacity down on this a little bit so it's just a mix of the two and it doesn't look so crazy blue. Um, just switch back over and we're just switching between the two colors. This one's a pretty noisy photo. It would have been beneficial to have worked on it. I'll turn the opacity down further. You can see it's just a slight modification, nothing huge, but it was available to us and we were able to do it quickly and easily because we used raw therapy. Now, if I wanted to, there's a couple of different ways to edit eyes. I could actually just create a new layer here and fill it in with the color white, add a layer mask, black full transparency, set the layer mode to overlay, and use the paintbrush tool and paint white, and that'll lighten the eye. I can actually kind of lighten the center of the eye a little bit just to kind of give it a little bit of an exaggerate, make it a little more interesting. But this photo isn't really in focus great as I wish it would have been, so all of these changes to the eye is kind of lost because it's really not that in focus. So I'm not even really gonna worry too much about that. But you can see a little bit of layer mode and some quick painting with a layer mask. You can do some pretty nice stuff with eyes. But if you're more interested in some of the heavier edits to eyes, I definitely recommend that you check out my tutorial on editing eyes with GIMP because it can go a pretty long way. Turn that down a little further. So there you go. It's a small change, nothing huge, but it's something. Now we'll go ahead and we'll whiten my teeth real quick, and that can be done just by right click new layer, set it to white, click OK, set that layer mode to saturation, right click, add a layer, and what that does, if you guys don't know what layer modes are, that is covered in the next lesson in my GIMP for Beginners series. But basically it just says, you know, take this color, or yeah, take the saturation value of whatever is in this layer and apply it to the layers underneath. So since white has a saturation level of 0, it applies the saturation and makes the photo completely black and white. So now I can add a layer mask, set it to black full transparency, and we get our color back because this layer mask has masked off all of that information. Now if I just zoom into my teeth, I just need to get rid of the color. I just paint color white on my layer mask, and you'll see that just like that, my teeth look less scary. If I zoom out, there we go. So there's before and after, and I can actually adjust the opacity down on that to make it not so perfectly white because that would look fake. So there you go. So now we're gonna save this as an XCF file. So I'm going to go back to the Bennett folder, create a new one, name it XCF, and hit save. And we're going to move on. I'm not going to export it as a JPEG. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just simply saving it as an XCF, closing it, and then moving on to the next one. Click File, open as layers, and open up the 12 files. Click Open. Go through the errors, and there we go. So now we have the 2 layers for the next photo opened up and ready to go. So you'll see there's the one with the less black, and this one's the one with the more black. Now, I like this one better for the most part, but this one has some things that allow me to, that it pulls some of the details out that this one loses, specifically in my shirt and things like that. So we're going to use both of them. I'm going to click on the bottom layer and I'm going to move it up one. So now it's on top of the bottommost layer. And we're going to right click on this and add a layer mask again. Set it to black full transparency and click add. Now whenever we zoom in, anywhere, if I make my brush a little bit bigger, anywhere where I paint white, it's going to make it lighter because it's showing this layer on top, which is the lighter version of this image. So if I just come through here, paint on the color white on my shirt, like that, I'm getting a little bit better exposure out of my shirt. Actually gonna make them tablet here. There we go. And obviously this isn't necessary, but I think it improves the photo a little bit. I could even, if I wanted to add some interesting shading or highlight my face a little bit more, I could, come up here in the areas where it's already lighter and make the lights a little bit lighter, and adjust the photo like that. Make the size of the brush a little bit smaller. There, there. And that's a really good face I'm making. Oh, buddy. All right. So we can also zoom into Bennett here and start painting some of the highlights on his face if we wanted to. And I could even adjust the opacity of this back on the brush so that whenever I'm painting, it's not just completely making it white. It just makes it somewhat in the middle, so you can kind of fade some of these details in and make it look nice. So if I hide this layer and show it, you'll see a before and after of his face. I'm just adding a little bit of highlight, just kind of trying to make the photo a little bit better in terms of, the how interesting the details are. Do a show and hide, you'll see pretty significant difference. There's the original and there's the modified version with some of the the painting that was done to make the highlights. I could come over here to my arm and do the same thing, if I really wanted to. How that looks. It just adds some highlight detail to the photo. Now I'm gonna right click on the layer and click disable layer mask and look at the overall background and decide if I like it. I think I like it better lighter. So we'll go ahead and up the opacity and up the size of our brush, and we'll just kind of paint in higher background with this. Now if I wanted to, I could get really detailed and take the time to actually use the paths tool to modify this, but it's if you're just making changes to the lightness of a photo, you don't necessarily need to do that all the time. Just be careful, especially with skies and stuff, because you can get halos and stuff around your faces where it's like really light and really dark from the feather from the brush. So if you do that, make sure to take the time to actually adjust your layer mask properly. So let's zoom out a little bit and turn the layer on and off, and you can see just how big of a difference that makes. This was overdone a little bit now though. Go ahead and pull the opacity back, switch over to the color black, and I'm kind of paint that away a little bit. There. That's better. Okay, so now, again, just hit File, Save, and save that out as another XCF file in the same folder. And then we'll move on to the next one. So I'll close this, hit File, Open as Layers, go to the 322 files and click Open. Wait till it's done. Okay, so now we have 3 versions of this photo. One of them is focused on exposing the face, one is focused on exposing the background, and one is focused on getting us his super, super blue eyes. So let's go ahead and first off, turn off this layer because we're not worried about that one yet. We're going to right click on this layer and click Add Layer Mask, set it to Black Full Transparency and click Add. That's going to bring the version, that's going to bring the dark version of him back. And you know what? On second thought, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to move this bright overexposed, or I'm sorry, the dark exposed version under the bright overexposed, and add the layer mask to the bright overexposed one, because I think it's going to be a little bit easier to mask that off instead of the other one. So let's go ahead and click the brush tool, set it to the color white, and you'll see as we paint the color white on the layer mask, we'll turn the opacity up, it's going to, it's making that overexposed. Not what we want. We want the opposite. So we actually want to up his exposure with the brush set to the color white. Basically, and you'll see just like that, we're getting the best of both worlds. We're getting the exposure from the getting the proper exposure of the sky, while we're simultaneously getting the best exposure of both him and the swing that he is sitting on. And I'm not going to do that to his hat because it'll blow it out. Leave that alone. So there you go, just like that. We get a nice bright photo. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to edit his eye. So we'll right click on the layer mask, add another layer mask, black full transparency, zoom in, increase the size of the brush, paint that blue, decrease it further, switch over to the color whites, black, paint his pupil back in. Woohoo, that's blue. Holy blue. Okay. That size. Okay. And then we'll adjust the opacity way back to make those more normal again. And you can see that's so further, before and after. Still not quite happy with that. So color the color black. Gonna get rid of that frame around the edge of his eye a little bit. There we go. That looks there we go, just like that. Okay, so there's a before, there's an after. There's a before of just the bottom layer, and an after. So, in the matter of 40 minutes, I was able to edit 3 photos from start to finish while simultaneously actually explaining what I was doing. So, obviously you can move even faster still if you know what you're doing and you're just not explaining and you're just doing the stuff, making the edits. We'll go ahead and save that third one out as an XCF. And then last but not least, we're going to close this window and click Filters, Batch Process. And then in our input, we're going to add, this is David's batch processor, by the way. This is the processor that I use for to save my files in bulk using GIMP. I'm actually going to send the link to download that in the chat, so feel free to take that and download it. And to install it, you just have to download the file and then just drag and drop the exe file that you get from the processor in the plugins folder of your GIMP folder on your drive, which is actually located. If you go to Start, most people have it located in, I think it's in, go to C users, your username, and then GIMP 2.8, and then plugins, and right there, dpp.exe. All you got to do is drop that in here. You don't open the exe file, you just drop it in. So once that's in, you can run this processor. So we're just going to, first off, pick the files that we need to edit. So we'll go to Thomas, Pictures, Senate, XCF, and select all 3 of these. Click Add, close this, and then go over to, we can resize if we wanted to. We could automatically scale, keep the aspect, and just make them, you know, a fourth of the size. But I'm not even going to do that. We're going to leave them at full size. Leave the rename. The rename will be okay. We'll leave the same source. So we'll do selected directory to save them in, and we'll pick the JPEG folder. Actually, we'll create a new folder and call it final. And we'll click open. And you'll see now it's going to save all of these photos to C users Thomas Pictures Bennett final. Output, we want the format to be JPEG. Quality, we'll make that 90. And we'll click start. So just like that, it's going to go through and save those XCFs. Now, granted, I only had to do this for free, so it wasn't a huge deal. But this is really handy whenever you're editing 200 pictures. You know, all of a sudden you've got your computer saving 200 pictures for you instead of spending the time to do that. So now, if we go to Bennett final, you'll see here's the 3 photos in their final forms. 1, 2, and 3. So there we go. Just like that, we have all of our pictures done, completed, and ready to go. So we can now upload these on Facebook or wherever you want to upload them, or print them, or do whatever you want to do with them. So I hope that makes sense. I know that I threw a lot of content at you guys in 40 minutes. And you know, I would like to stress that I go into a lot more detail of this entire thing on my website. If you actually, in the description area underneath the video, right here, you'll see there's a link right here, gimptutorials.com/pwc. You click on that link, it's going to take you to a open source post-processing workflow course. And that'll actually use the same, it talks about all of the stuff that I talked about here in terms of the general process and how to do these edits and things like that, but it goes a lot slower. It's several hours of content, several hours of editing, several hours of advice and information, and you can, you know, grasp a lot more of the bigger concepts. I also get into how you retouch skin with GIMP. You know, I edit, I fix acne, I fix blemishes, and things like that. Um, so it's a very handy course to do, and I highly recommend that you check it out. It's, like I said, gimptutorials.com/pwc. It's in the description area underneath this video. So, okay, that sums it up. Let's finish this out with some questions. I'm gonna go ahead and look through the chat and answer any of the questions I've seen so far. But feel free, um, send a message in the chat, and I'll answer the question. So, let's start with site down. No, no, it's not. That's good. Liva Quinn got it fixed. Okay, I answered the question about JPEGs and TIFFs, right? And I also answered the question about unsharp masking. So I think those things are all taken care of. Yeah, this is the link to that course. Okay, so there we go. So if you guys have any questions, like I said, I'll be staying here. I'll be live and ready to answer questions over the next couple of minutes. So feel free to do so. In the meantime, I'm gonna edit another picture. 5-star. You're welcome. Happy to help. Yeah, but that I appreciate you guys taking the time to come see this. I'm really glad that I really hope you guys got a lot of good information out of it, because I think a really good way to go about it. His eyes look really good in this. Right. So, okay, there we go. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So thanks again for watching, guys, and feel free to. Oh yeah, one more thing. if you go to something that my website I'm working on doing is working on trying to create a platform for people to be able to ask me questions related to GIMP. Um, yes, raw therapy is absolutely 100% free. I have not gone over how to do watermarking. However, I know there exists some things out there that can do that. I think I don't know. I haven't really done it too much in GIMP. I know it can be done, and I know it can be done quickly because script foo does work and it is something. Um, but I've never done it myself. The link to raw therapy, that's raw therapy. But anyway, something that I want you guys to know is after um, if after this course, if you guys have any questions and you guys are struggling or having trouble making an edit and you're trying to get something just right and you want help doing it, I am ready and I'm available and I'm willing to help. All you have to do is go to gimptutorials.com/askgimpt right here, and you can click on, or you can click on it right here. And on my website, you can actually click ask a question. And if you're logged in, which I'll log in real quick, you can actually ask a question here for me. You can upload a photo, and you can do all kinds of stuff with this tool. And as soon as you do, anybody else who's viewing this can answer the question, and you can get a lot of advice from this. I'm working to try to build a a a backlog, I guess, of people asking questions and things like that, so that I can help people better using my website. And obviously, I'm reading these closely, and I'll answer your questions to the best of my abilities as soon as I can. So by all means, go to my website if you have a question, ask the question there, and look around and answer some other people's questions, and let's see what we come up with. So okay, guys, that sums it up. I think. Um, Oh, Gymnar, I would love to see more about it. Should send it me actually. Yeah, just send it to me via a message on Plus or Facebook or something, and I'll check it out. So, okay, great. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. And you guys ever need anything, like I said, ask questions in GIMP. Check out that course. It's really great. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.